Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Thursday, February 13th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 491 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Appreciate your support. As always, of course, thank you to those of you tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms where the show can be found as well. And today it is officially official. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets have moved on. It is a new era. And now we await the answer for quarterback in 2025. Who will it be? Lots of discussions, of course, lots of names that will now be brought up. But the Aaron Rodgers era that started just about 2 years ago, really in April, when the trade was officially made in April 2023, fast forward to February of 2025, and it's over. So I want to dive right into it today on the podcast. I don't want to waste any time. Want to get right into it. Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, along with Woody Johnson, released statements today, and we'll throw these right up on the screen along with reading them as well. So here was the statement from Aaron Glenn and GM Darren Muji. It states, last week we met with Aaron and shared that our intention was to move in a different direction at quarterback. It was important to have this discussion now to provide clarity and enable each of us the proper time to plan for our respective futures. We want to thank him for the leadership, passion, and dedication he brought to the organization and wish him success moving forward. This was also a statement from Woody Johnson that states, I personally want to thank Aaron for his time at the New York Jets. His arrival in 2023 was met with unbridled excitement, and I will forever be grateful that he chose to join us to continue his Hall of Fame career. From day one, he embodied all that it meant to be a New York Jet, embraced our fans, and immersed himself in our city. That is what I will remember most when I look back at his time here. He will always be welcome, and I wish him only the best in whatever he chooses to do next. We knew these were coming. It was only really a matter of time, right? Jay Glazer's report came out on Sunday, couple hours before Super Bowl 59, and it was just a waiting game until the New York Jets officially made this statement. But you have to give the Jets credit here, whether or not you like the decision. Number one, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji obviously feel this is the right move, and you have to give them time and hope that they can get this thing figured out and implement their culture and the guy that they want leading this team in 2025, and eventually finding your long-term answer in 2026 and beyond. But you have to give credit there. As mentioned in the Glenn and Muji statement, they got ahead of this, right? This was something that we did not want to really fester into March, fester into free agency, get into April. You couldn't have that. You needed this to get done soon. You needed an answer. Rodgers needed to give the Jets an answer on whether or not, number one, he wants to play, which we still don't really know if Rodgers wants to play. We'll probably eventually find that out. There's a good chance he'll be on Pat McAfee next week. Another reason why the Jets needed to get ahead of this and release a statement of their own before Rodgers came out and said stuff of his own. So you give credit to the Jets for getting this decision done. Right, this was not something that could continue into the offseason where it affects your free agency, affects how you evaluate the draft. This needs to get done. They get it done before the new league year. They get this decision done and an official statement out before the combine. And now you await the new league year and really wipe this slate clean and figure out what you're doing next. And the Aaron Rodgers era now, most importantly, is officially over. It's a disappointing era. It's an era that we'll look back on and kind of just play the what ifs in our mind. How different would it have been if he wasn't laying on the MetLife turf 4 snaps into 2023 against the Buffalo Bills. I think you can make a case that'll go down with many other what-ifs in Jets history as a major one-if that. Right? The injury clearly wasn't the same player last season. The culture, of course, got very, very rotten. Defense took a massive drop-off last year. You fire the head coach, fire the general manager in the middle of last season. It was a train wreck. And that's, I think, just the most unfortunate part is it ultimately ended 4 snaps in. And that's just, it's so hard to grasp that as a Jet fan, but that's the reality. It ended 4 snaps in. Last year was just kind of an extension of what has been the last 14 years, which has been nothing short of a disaster and a whole lot of losing. And it's a whole lot of media, a whole lot of publicity, but not enough wins. And now the Jets move on, and you have to trust Glenn, you have to trust Muji, and have to hope that they have an answer not only for 2025 to try and compete, but also have an answer, of course, and have a feeling on where they want to go moving forward 2026 and beyond, and how they want to just approach this whole process and really this whole future without Rodgers. And you guys know where I stood. Throughout the season, I thought it would be best to move on from Rodgers. Going into the offseason, I started to see a little bit more of both sides of it. I understand the aspect of bringing Rodgers back. I also understand the side of moving on from him, and that's what the Jets choose to do. Now it's about Glenn trying to implement his culture. I still think this team can win next year. I still think they can compete, not win a Super Bowl, but I still don't think it's crazy if they can be competitive, if you get better coaching and get competent quarterback play and learn how to actually run a competent NFL offense under Tanner Engstrand, right? Because, we could talk about, okay, Rodgers gives you maybe the best quarterback play, but what about getting the run game going? How about that? What about spreading the ball around? There's so many other things, too, that needs to be done on this offense besides just the quarterback being the biggest one. But there is a lot that also needs to get done on offense in terms of talent, figuring out the run game, new system, all that stuff. And we knew Rodgers coming back, it would be, there was a lot against it. There was a lot against him coming back. There was a lot that needed to happen, right? We talked a lot about this on Sunday, but you needed the coach and general manager to want him back. Rodgers himself wanted to come back. I think that him flying out to Jersey shows that he still has interest in playing. What will the market be for him? We'll find out, when the new league year starts and when he can eventually sign with a new team on March 13th. But he needed to take a pay cut, needed to learn a new system. There's a lot that needed to happen. And I think it's also just Glenn and Muji cutting bait and wanting to start fresh and wanting their own guys, wanting their culture fits here. Rodgers, they obviously didn't feel fit. And you also hear a lot of reports that many of the general managers and head coaches that interviewed for this job didn't want Rodgers back. So they're not really in the minority here with this decision. Now, I want to throw this up here or bring this up. The New York Jets, it looks like, are going to designate this as a post-June 1st cut, which means it's a $14 million cap hit this season and a $35 million cap hit in 2026 in terms of the dead money, because Rodgers finishes the Jets or leaves the Jets with a $49 million dead cap hit. Now, just some numbers on the post-June 1st. The $23.5 million cap number will be on the books until June 2nd. That will then eventually drop down to 14 for the rest of 2025. And Rodgers also, with this decision to designate him as a post-June 1, he will be on the roster until March 12th. Then when the new league year begins, he can then negotiate March 13th or then figure out where he wants to go March 13th, and he'll be a free agent and he'll be open to anybody to sign. Now, I personally would have preferred to take the $49 million and designated him as a pre-June 1st cut and just swallow the $49 million this year and not have to kind of kick it down the road for next year where you still have to pay the $35 million dead cap. But look, the reality is this does, to look at the positive side of it, while I would have rathered them just completely pay the $49 million, swallow it this season, then next year in 2026, it's really a fresh start, and you don't have to still kind of have this $35 million, this Rodgers cap still hovering over you. This does allow the Jets to have a little bit more flexibility for this year, which we all still want them to compete. I still want this team to win in 2025. I still think they can compete. and be a solid football team in 2025 that can win some games. I want that, and I still think they can do that. And by designating him as a post-June 1 does allow them to have a little bit more flexibility this year, where they only have the $14 million dead cap as opposed to $49 million this year. And you also have to throw into the fact that next year, the salary cap will probably increase like it always does, probably about another $20 million. So that $35 million with the cap increasing another $20 million really won't look as bad as it does now. So I do get both sides of it. Still would have rather the $49 million, but you can understand where the New York Jets are coming from would designate him as a post-June 1. So it's over. And now the Jets, I think most importantly, look, Glenn and Muji want a quarterback, right? They want a guy that's one of 53. So who is that guy? Who is that guy that can come in here and help this team compete in 2025 and be a bridge for whoever your option is in 2026? There's, of course, a long list. You know, you look at the in-house options. Tyrod Taylor, of course, stands out. Jordan Travis, I don't think you can bank on him doing a whole lot. I've said this many times with Jordan Travis. I think anything you get out of him at this point is a bonus. This is a guy that's never completed an NFL practice. I think we should pump the brakes on this guy starting games in 2025. And not only that, but being the future of this organization when he was a 5th-round pick from a previous regime. You know, it's not like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are still here. This is a completely new regime that didn't even draft Jordan Travis. There's a good chance that they bring in another veteran and then draft, let's say, a Jackson Dart, and all of a sudden Jordan Travis might be the odd man out. Forget about practicing, forget about playing. He might not even be on the roster. So I doubt him as a really realistic option. I think Tyrod's the most realistic just because he's already on the team, and we'll go through a ton of options here in another episode. But, you know, you throw around guys like Justin Fields. You want to bring up a name like a Jacoby Brissett, a Jameis Winston. You know, Darnold, I think, is unrealistic. I don't think that happens, but that's a guy that's out there. A Carson Wentz, Cooper Rush, just some of the free agents, right? Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, maybe a little bit more of your higher profile in terms of name guys, but if they get cut from Atlanta and New Orleans, could be very cheap options for the Jets. You guys know how I feel about Kirk. I would not bring him in. But do the Jets go that route of bringing in just another, you know, Kirk Cousins would only be about $1.2 million, I believe it would be, with Atlanta paying about $27 million. If they cut him similar to Russ in Pittsburgh last year, same case with Derek Carr, would be very cheap for the Jets with New Orleans paying the majority of the rest of his contract. So I could see those guys, you know, throw Jake Browning. You want to throw in a Hendon Hooker, Tanner McKee. I think you're starting to get really deep in the list. I think realistically, you're looking at Tyrod and then a Winston, a Fields, somebody like that. I don't foresee them bringing in a Darnold. I don't see that happening. I don't see Stafford happening. I don't see a Kyler Murray happening. I think those are a little bit more unrealistic. Daniel Jones, you throw him out there. I don't think he's coming back to this New York market. But there's a lot of options. You could probably think of 20. Ultimately, there'll be one guy under center in week 1. Who would that be? Unknown. I think it'll be Tyrod, but it's a new era. It's a new era. You move on. It's finished. It was ugly. It resulted in a torn Achilles, 5 wins in 2024, and countless headlines. And I said when the New York Jets officially made the trade, actually, I forget which episode. It might have been, it was either the episode when they officially made the trade or the episode when he went on McAfee and announced that he wanted to be a Jet. I came onto this very podcast and I said, no matter what happens, it's going to be a crazy ride. And I think we can all agree it was a crazy ride. For worse, it was a crazy ride. I said on that podcast, whether it's good or bad, it's going to be a crazy ride. And I think we can all agree the Rodgers experience was a crazy ride. Unfortunately, it was a ride that did not include many wins and instead included a lot of torture, continued torture, which we've all sat through here now for years and years and years. Hopefully this is the start really of a successful new beginning. And it's Glenn and Muji's team, and they get to run this thing the way they want it to. And this is the decision they felt best. You've got to trust them and hope it works out. That's the biggest thing. You have no clue if it's going to work, but You have to hope that it does, and you have to trust them and believe. And I do think there are aspects of this decision that make a lot of sense. I've said it, on Sunday. Also mentioned a little bit earlier on in the podcast. Setting that culture, Rodgers comes with a lot of baggage. And you want to sit here and go through his numbers and his statistics from last year, that's fine. Some of those numbers were inflated. Some of those numbers need context. I still think you can get quarterback play that's competent enough for this team to still compete in 2025. I strongly believe that. And we'll see if that's what happens. So it's officially over. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets are moving on. What's next for Rodgers? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What's next for the Jets? Let me know that too in the comment section down below. We'll have a lot more content coming your way. Plan on having a podcast up tomorrow, most likely, on the quarterback options now for the New York Jets in 2025. And yes, stay tuned. Until next time, Jets, Jets, Jets.